It was one of those lazy summer afternoons where the air hangs thick with heat, and time seems to slow down just enough for folks to enjoy a few hours by the pool. The neighborhood was quiet except for the distant hum of sprinklers and the laughter of kids splashing around. You could almost taste the chlorine in the air, and the sun bounced off the water like it was trying to blind anyone bold enough to look straight at it. Jalen, a tall and lanky 16-year-old with a quiet smile, stood out, not just because of the color of his skin, but because of the way he carried himself. He wasn't loud or unruly. He wasn't showing off. He was just there, towel over his shoulder, earbuds in, nodding along to the beat only he could hear. He wasn't a stranger to the neighborhood. His best friend Marcus lived there, just 2 blocks from the pool. They'd grown up together since kindergarten. Different homes, different skin, same shared snacks and backyard games. Marcus had vouched for him at the front desk, even handed him a laminated guest pass like the dozens given out each summer. Jalen thanked him, waved, and headed to a lounge chair by the deep end. The pool wasn't crowded, just a few families, a couple of teenagers tanning with their phones out, and a lifeguard half dozing behind mirrored sunglasses. If you asked Jalen, it was a perfect day. Her name was Linda, but folks like her have earned another name these days. Karen. You've seen her before, the one who watches the neighborhood like a self-appointed sheriff, who smiles tight at you in the morning and scowls at your kids by afternoon. She wasn't a bad woman by her own definition. In fact, if you asked her, she'd say she was just looking out for the community. Linda was in her early 50s, fit from years of yoga, with sharp features and an even sharper sense of entitlement. She wore her authority like it was stitched into her sundress. That day, she was walking her dog, a little white terrier named Muffin, when she saw Jalen by the pool. She stopped in her tracks. She squinted at him, not with curiosity, but calculation. She didn't ask herself if he was a guest. She didn't wonder if he was there with a friend. Her mind jumped to one conclusion: he doesn't belong here. She approached with the confidence of someone who believed rules were hers to interpret. "Excuse me," she began, her voice already laced with condescension. "Who are you here with?" Jalen turned his head politely and replied, "I'm with Marcus. I have a guest pass." But that wasn't enough, not for Linda. "I don't think I've seen you here before," she said, as if his presence required prior approval. Her tone hardened. "I'm going to need to see that pass." It wasn't about rules. It was about control. Linda didn't see a teenager enjoying the pool. She saw a disruption to the order she believed she upheld. And in her world, authority wasn't earned. It was assumed, especially when it came to people who didn't look like her. Jalen reached calmly into his backpack and pulled out the laminated guest pass Marcus had given him. He held it up for her to see. Steady hands, no attitude. Just facts. But Linda barely glanced at it. "That could be anyone's," she said, waving it off like it was counterfeit cash. "I'm going to speak to the HOA about this." A few parents nearby exchanged looks. Some whispered. Others just watched. That's the thing about these moments. People see them unfold, feel the discomfort, but most stay silent. Nobody wants to be the first to step into the fire. Jalen didn't move. He didn't flinch. He'd been taught how to stand still in the storm. His mom always said, "Don't let their chaos turn into yours." But Linda kept going. "You need to leave. Now," she said, voice louder, sharper. "This is private property." That word, private, carried a weight. It wasn't just about a pool. It was about access, about who's welcome and who needs to prove they should be. Jalen looked around. A few phones were up now recording. He looked back at her and asked quietly, "Why are you asking me to leave?" Linda scoffed. "Don't play the victim," she snapped. "I know what this is." But she didn't know. Not yet. In that moment, Linda wasn't just arguing with a teenager. She was standing at the edge of a line, one that generations before her had drawn and redrawn. And with every word, every demand, she stepped further into the shadow of something uglier than she realized. What she saw as discipline, others began to see for what it was, a display of control steeped in assumption and fear. And then Jalen pulled out his phone. Jalen didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice or push back. Instead, he did something that stopped Linda mid-sentence. He reached into his pocket, calmly unlocked his phone and said, "All right, I'll call my mom." Linda let out a laugh, a short, dismissive snort. "Go ahead," she said, hands on her hips. "Let's see what mommy has to say." Her voice dripped with sarcasm like she was about to win a battle she didn't even know she was losing. Jalen didn't say a word. He tapped the screen, held the phone to his ear, and waited. "Hey, Mom," he said, eyes still on Linda. "I'm at the pool. That thing we talked about? Yeah, it's happening." On the other end, a voice replied firmly without hesitation, "Tell her I'm on my way." That's all Jalen needed. He hung up, slid the phone back into his pocket, and looked Linda in the eye. Not with anger, not with fear, but with the quiet strength of someone who knew exactly what was coming. And for the first time, Linda's confidence began to crack, because something in his tone told her she'd just made a mistake she couldn't take back. 15 minutes passed, not long by most standards, but long enough for the air around the pool to thicken with tension. Linda had stopped pacing but not talking. "You know," she said to no one in particular, "kids today just think they can do whatever they want." Her voice was still loud, still self-assured, but now it carried a nervous edge like someone trying to convince a crowd, or herself. Then from the parking lot, the sound of tires crunching gravel. Heads turned. A sleek black SUV pulled up, tinted windows, quiet engine, government plates. The driver's door opened first. A man in a dark suit stepped out, surveyed the scene. Then the back door opened. She stepped out like she'd done it 1,000 times before, heels clicking with purpose, posture straight as a flagpole, eyes hidden behind sunglasses that didn't need to see to command attention. It was her, Governor Elaine Brooks, the state's highest office, standing poolside in heels and a blazer, her son's backpack slung over one arm like it belonged to her, just as much as it did to him. Conversation stopped. Phones rose. Linda's mouth fell open. Jalen stood and walked toward her. "Mom," he said, calm and respectful. Elaine put a hand gently on his shoulder and looked directly at Linda. "Is there a reason my son was told to leave this pool?" Linda stammered, the words getting stuck in her throat. I didn't know." Elaine didn't blink. "Number you didn't, but you acted anyway." The weight of those words landed hard. The woman who thought she had all the power now stood face to face with the kind that didn't shout, but spoke once, and the whole world listened. For a moment, silence gripped the poolside. The same silence that falls when thunder rolls in the distance, just before the lightning strikes. Governor Elaine Brooks removed her sunglasses, revealing eyes not of anger, but of command. The kind of look that made people sit up straighter without even realizing it. "Did my son break any rules?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Linda, flustered and red-faced, shook her head. I didn't recognize him. He looked out of place and that's all it took?" the governor interrupted. "You assumed, judged, and tried to humiliate a child. My child." Linda opened her mouth and closed it again. There was nothing left to say. Every excuse sounded weak, every justification unraveling before it could even be spoken. Elaine stepped closer, not confrontational, but resolute. "This isn't about you not recognizing him. It's about why you felt you had the right to question him at all." Around them, people stood in stunned silence, some ashamed they hadn't spoken up, others quietly nodding, grateful someone finally had. Elaine turned to her son. "Are you all right?" Jalen nodded. "Yeah." She looked back at Linda. "Next time, ask yourself why you're so quick to protect a space that was never under threat." And with that, she placed a hand on her son's back and guided him away, dignified, unshaken. Linda, she was left alone, standing in the shadow of her own prejudice, realizing too late that power built on fear and assumption always collapses when faced with real strength. As they walked back to the car, Jalen looked up at his mom. "You didn't have to come all the way down here," he said. Elaine smiled gently. "Yes, I did," she replied, "because silence lets things like this grow roots." They got into the SUV, and as the door closed behind them, the spell that had frozen the poolside seemed to break. People started talking again, but softer this time, more thoughtful. Some parents whispered apologies, others spoke to their children, trying to explain what had just happened, and maybe even why. Linda, for her part, stayed where she was, quiet now. No more lectures, no more accusations. Just a woman watching her reflection in the calm surface of a pool she once thought she controlled. Back in the SUV, Jalen looked out the window, his face thoughtful. You think she learned anything? Elaine didn't answer right away. She started the car, checked her mirror, then said, maybe, maybe not, but everyone else did. And that was true, because that day wasn't just about a woman's assumptions or a boy at a pool. It was about how quiet dignity will always outshine loud ignorance. It was about showing up, not with fists or fury, but with truth, poise, and presence. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply stand tall, speak softly, and let the weight of what's right do the rest. As they drove away, the sun hung low in the sky, and the world felt just a little more awake.